Bullies attempt to steal the new girl's phone. Wrong target. She was a KRAV MAGA instructor. Maya Rodriguez adjusted her worn backpack straps as she walked through the imposing glass doors of Westfield High School for the first time. At 17, she stood barely 5 feet 3 inches tall, with a slight frame that made her look younger than her age. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore modest clothes that had seen better days. Moving from a small town in New Mexico to this affluent suburban school in California had been jarring enough without the added stress of being the new girl in the middle of junior year. Just keep your head down and get through the day, she told herself, clutching her outdated smartphone tightly in her hand. The device was 3 generations old, with a cracked screen that she'd covered with clear tape. It wasn't much, but it was her only connection to her friends back home and her mother, who worked double shifts at the hospital to support them both. The hallways of Westfield High buzzed with the energy of students who had known each other for years. Designer clothes, expensive sneakers, and the latest iPhones seemed to be the standard here. Maya felt like she was walking through a different world entirely. She'd spent the last 5 years training intensively in KRAV MAGA under her uncle's guidance, a former Israeli Defense Forces instructor who'd moved to their small town. But here, surrounded by wealth and privilege she'd never experienced, those skills felt irrelevant. "Excuse me," she said quietly to a girl with perfectly styled blonde hair. "Could you tell me where room 204 is?" The girl looked Maya up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Second floor, obviously. Can't you read the numbers?" She walked away without another word, leaving Maya standing alone in the crowded hallway. This is going to be a long semester, Maya thought, making her way to the stairs. It was during lunch that she first encountered them. Maya had found an empty table in the corner of the cafeteria, hoping to eat her homemade sandwich in peace while scrolling through messages from her old friends. The cafeteria was a sprawling space with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in streams of natural light. Students clustered in their established groups, the social hierarchy as visible as if it were painted on the walls. "Well, well, what do we have here?" The voice belonged to a tall, athletic boy with perfectly styled brown hair and a Letterman jacket that probably cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe. This was Derek Ashford, the quarterback of the football team and undisputed king of the school's social pyramid. Behind him stood his 2 constant companions, Brad Morrison, a stocky wrestler with a perpetual sneer, and Tyler Kim, whose family's tech fortune had bought him a place in Derek's inner circle. Maya looked up from her phone, immediately sensing trouble. "I'm sorry, is this your table? I can move." "Nah, you're fine there," Derek said, sliding into the seat across from her uninvited. Brad and Tyler flanked him, creating a wall of intimidation. "I'm Derek. You're the new girl, right? Maya something." "Rodriguez," she said quietly, her grip tightening on her phone. "Right, Rodriguez. From Mexico." Derek's tone carried a mocking edge that made several nearby students turn to watch. "New Mexico," Maya corrected, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Brad laughed loudly. "Same difference, right? So what brings you to our little slice of paradise? Your family win the lottery or something?" Maya's jaw clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "My mom got a job at the hospital here. We needed a fresh start." Tyler leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Maya's taped-up phone. "Dude, check out that ancient relic. What is that, from like 2019? Does it even have internet?" "It works fine," Maya said, instinctively pulling the phone closer to her chest. Derek reached across the table with lightning speed, snatching the device from her hands. "Let me see this museum piece. Maybe we can get you an upgrade to something from this decade." "Give it back," Maya said, her voice carrying a warning edge that none of them recognized. Inside, she could feel her training kicking in, her body automatically assessing threats and calculating responses. But she forced herself to remain calm. Don't make waves on your first day. Don't give them a reason to make your life hell. Relax, I'm just looking, Derek said, turning the phone over in his hands. Wow, this thing is seriously pathetic. Look at this crack. And what's with all this tape? This is embarrassing. A small crowd had gathered now, drawn by the spectacle. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her, watching to see how the new girl would handle being put in her place by the school's elite. Some students looked sympathetic, but none stepped forward to help. This was clearly a well-established dynamic at Westfield High. "Please just give it back," Maya said, standing up slowly. At her full height, she barely reached Derek's shoulder, making the size difference even more pronounced. "Or what?" Brad interjected with a laugh. "You gonna tell the teacher? Maybe call your mummy?" He made exaggerated crying motions with his hands. Derek held the phone high above his head, well out of Maya's reach. "I think we should do you a favor and put this thing out of its misery. It's clearly suffering." Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Every instinct screamed at her to act, to show these privileged bullies exactly what she was capable of. She could have Derek on the ground in 3 seconds flat, could disable all 3 of them before they knew what hit them. But the rational part of her mind held her back. "You're the new girl. You're outnumbered. You need to survive here for the next year and a half. Derek, come on. Just give her the phone back," said a quiet voice from the crowd. Maya turned to see a girl with short red hair and kind eyes, but she was quickly silenced by Derek's withering glare. "Mind your own business, Emma," Derek snapped. "We're just having a friendly conversation with our new classmate here." Tyler pulled out his latest iPhone, holding it next to Maya's battered device. "Look at this comparison. It's like caveman technology next to actual civilization. How do you even take selfies with this brick?" The laughter from the surrounding students cut through Maya like a knife. She could feel her face burning with humiliation, but she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Look, I don't want any trouble," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want my phone back so I can finish my lunch." Derek's expression shifted to mock sympathy. "Oh, she doesn't want any trouble. How sweet." He tossed the phone carelessly to Brad, who caught it with one hand. "But here's the thing, Rodriguez. This is our school. We've been here since kindergarten. You're just visiting." Brad examined the phone with exaggerated interest. "You know what? I think this thing might actually be a health hazard. All this tape and these cracks, probably full of bacteria. We should really dispose of it properly." "Yeah," Tyler chimed in. "It's basically a public service. We're protecting the whole school from whatever diseases this thing might be carrying." Maya's breathing became shallow as she watched her only connection to home being passed around like a toy. The phone contained photos of her father, who had died 2 years earlier, along with messages from friends she might never see again. It wasn't just a device, it was her lifeline to everything she'd left behind. "Please," she said, hating how desperate she sounded. "It has pictures of my family on it. Important stuff. I can't replace those." Derek's smile turned cruel. "Should have thought of that before bringing such a piece of junk to our school. Maybe this will teach you to invest in better technology." The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Students began gathering their belongings and heading to their next classes. Derek stood up, still holding Maya's phone, and made a show of examining it one more time. "Tell you what, Rodriguez, meet us after school by the gym, and maybe we'll give this back to you, if you ask nicely enough." He slipped the phone into his jacket pocket and walked away with his friends, leaving Maya standing alone at the table with tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Just get through the day, she told herself again, but the mantra was becoming harder to believe. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of classes where Maya struggled to concentrate. Teachers introduced her to their classes with varying degrees of enthusiasm, and she endured the curious stares and whispered comments of her new classmates. Without her phone, she felt completely disconnected from everything familiar. When the final bell rang, Maya made her way to the gymnasium with heavy steps. The building was older than the main school, with brick walls and small windows that gave it an imposing appearance. Behind it was a courtyard area where the athletic teams often gathered after practice. As she rounded the corner, she saw Derek, Brad, and Tyler waiting for her, along with several other students who had apparently come to watch the show. "Look who actually showed up," Derek called out as Maya approached. "I wasn't sure you'd have the guts." Maya stopped about 10 feet away from the group, her posture tense but controlled. "I'm here. Now give me my phone back." "Not so fast," Brad said, pulling the device from Derek's jacket. "We had some time to think about your situation, and we've decided to help you out." Tyler held up his own expensive phone, the camera app already open. "We're going to film a little public service announcement. You're going to tell everyone how grateful you are that we're helping you upgrade your technology." Maya's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Derek's grin widened. "Simple. You're going to get on your knees, thank us for being such good friends, and then we're going to smash that piece of junk and buy you something better. Think of it as a welcome to Westfield gift." The crowd of onlookers murmured with anticipation. Maya could see some students looking uncomfortable with the situation, but none of them moved to intervene. This was clearly how things worked at Westfield High. The strong preyed on the weak, and everyone else just watched. "I'm not getting on my knees," Maya said quietly, but her voice carried clearly in the afternoon air. Brad laughed. "Oh, I think you are. See, the way this works is pretty simple. You can do this the easy way, or we can make your life here a living hell. Your choice." Maya's mind raced through her options. She could walk away, but they'd still have her phone, and the harassment would only get worse. She could report them to the administration, but she doubted anything would come of it. These boys clearly had influence and connections. Or she could do what every fiber of her being was screaming at her to do, show them exactly who they were messing with. But then what, she thought? You'll be the violent new girl who attacked the quarterback. You'll be expelled, and Mom will have to start over somewhere else. "Come on, Rodriguez," Derek said, his patience clearly wearing thin. "We don't have all day. Get on your knees and say thank you, or things are going to get a lot worse for you." Tyler held up his phone, finger hovering over the record button. "This is going to be epic. Wait until everyone sees the new girl begging." Maya closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself the way her uncle had taught her. When she opened them again, her expression was calm, almost serene. "No," she said simply. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Derek's expression darkened, and he took a step forward. "What did you just say to me?" "I said no." Maya's voice was steady now, all traces of fear gone. "I'm not getting on my knees, I'm not thanking you, and I'm not letting you destroy my phone." Brad cracked his knuckles menacingly. "I think the little Mexican girl needs to learn some respect." "I'm not Mexican," Maya said, her tone conversational despite the tension crackling in the air. "And I think you need to learn the difference between respect and fear." Derek's face flushed red with anger. "You know what? Forget the phone. I think you need a lesson in how things work around here." He nodded to Brad and Tyler, who began moving to flank Maya. The crowd pressed closer, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Maya could hear whispered bets being placed on how long she'd last against the three athletes. Most gave her less than 30 seconds. "Last chance, Rodriguez," Derek said, pulling her phone from his pocket and holding it high. "Apologize and beg, or I drop this right here on the concrete." Maya looked at the phone, then at Derek's smug face, then at the crowd of students who expected her to crumble under pressure. For 5 years, she had trained her body and mind to be a weapon, to protect herself and others from exactly this kind of situation. Her uncle's voice echoed in her memory. "KRAV MAGA is not about starting fights, it's about ending them." "Go ahead," Maya said, spreading her feet shoulder-width apart and lowering her center of gravity slightly. "Drop it." Derek's eyes widened in surprise. This wasn't how these encounters usually went. The new kids were supposed to be intimidated, to back down and accept their place in the hierarchy. They weren't supposed to stand their ground and issue challenges. "You think you're tough?" he snarled, raising the phone higher. "Fine. Let's see how tough you are when you're picking up the pieces." He hurled the phone toward the concrete with all his strength. But instead of the satisfying crash he expected, Derek watched in amazement as Maya moved with fluid precision, catching the device inches from the ground in a move that looked almost supernatural in its speed and grace. The crowd gasped collectively. Maya straightened up slowly, examining her phone for damage before slipping it safely into her back pocket. "My turn," she said quietly. What happened next would be talked about at Westfield High for years to come. Derek, still processing what he'd just witnessed, was completely unprepared when Maya closed the distance between them in 2 quick steps. Her right hand shot out in a precise palm strike to his solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs and doubling him over. Before he could recover, her knee came up to meet his face, sending him stumbling backward with blood streaming from his nose. Brad, the wrestler, reacted first among Derek's friends. He charged forward with a roar, intending to tackle Maya to the ground where his size advantage would matter. But Maya had been training for exactly this scenario for years. She sidestepped his clumsy rush and drove her elbow into his kidney as he passed, sending him crashing into the brick wall of the gymnasium. Tyler, seeing his friends go down in a matter of seconds, pulled out his phone and started backing away. "This is crazy. She's psycho." Maya turned her attention to him, her movements calm and controlled despite the violence she'd just unleashed. "Put the phone away, Tyler. This doesn't need to go viral." "Stay back," Tyler shouted, holding his phone like a shield. "I'll call the cops." "For what?" Maya asked, continuing her slow advance. "Self-defense? They attacked me first. Everyone here saw it." The crowd was in chaos now, some students cheering, others backing away in shock. Emma, the red-haired girl who had tried to speak up earlier, was staring at Maya with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Derek struggled to his feet, his Letterman jacket torn and his face a mess of blood and rage. "You're dead, Rodriguez. You have no idea who you're messing with." Maya turned back to face him, her stance relaxed, but ready. "Actually, I think you're the one who doesn't understand who you're messing with." Derek wiped blood from his nose and charged again, this time with more caution. He'd been in plenty of fights before, mostly against other football players who relied on brute strength. But Maya moved like water, flowing around his attacks and striking with surgical precision. A quick jab to his throat left him gasping, and a sweep of her leg sent him crashing to the ground once more. Brad had recovered enough to rejoin the fight, his face twisted with humiliation and rage. He approached more carefully this time, his wrestling training evident in his stance. But KRAV MAGA had been designed to deal with larger, stronger opponents, and Maya had spent countless hours learning to use an attacker's size against them. When Brad grabbed for her, Maya trapped his arm and used his own momentum to throw him over her hip in a perfect judo throw. He hit the concrete hard, the impact driving the fight out of him completely. Tyler had given up any pretense of helping his friends and was now filming everything, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "This is insane," he muttered, backing toward the school building. "She's like a ninja or something." Maya stood in the center of the courtyard, barely breathing hard, despite the intense physical confrontation. Derek and Brad were both on the ground, groaning and trying to process what had just happened to them. The crowd of students stared in stunned silence, their worldview fundamentally altered by what they'd witnessed. "Here's how this is going to work," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. "You're going to leave me alone, all of you. You're not going to take my things, you're not going to mock my family, and you're not going to make my life difficult just because you think you can." Derek struggled to sit up, his nose clearly broken and his pride shattered. "You can't. This isn't over." Maya crouched down next to him, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. Yes, it is, because if you ever come near me again, if you even look at me wrong, I will put you in the hospital. And unlike this little demonstration, next time I won't hold back." She stood up and addressed the crowd. "I didn't come here looking for trouble. I just wanted to finish high school and move on with my life. But I won't be anyone's victim. Not here, not anywhere." Emma stepped forward from the crowd, her eyes shining with admiration. "That was incredible. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "KRAV MAGA," Maya said simply. 5 years of training. My uncle thought it was important for me to be able to protect myself." "No kidding," said another student, a tall boy with glasses who had been watching from the back of the crowd. "I've never seen anything like that outside of movies." Derek finally managed to get to his feet, leaning heavily against the wall for support. His face was a mask of humiliation and rage, but there was something else there too, a grudging respect that he clearly didn't want to acknowledge. "This isn't over," he said again, but the words lacked conviction. Maya met his gaze steadily. "Yes, it is. Because you know now that you can't win. And more importantly, everyone else knows it too." She was right, and Derek knew it. His reputation as the untouchable king of Westfield High had been shattered in front of dozens of witnesses. The video Tyler had taken would be all over social media within hours, showing him getting beaten by a girl half his size. The social hierarchy that had seemed so permanent was suddenly revealed to be as fragile as everything else. Brad limped over to help Derek, both of them moving like old men despite their youth. Tyler had already disappeared, probably rushing to upload his footage and claim his 15 minutes of fame as the guy who filmed the fight of the century. "Come on," Brad muttered to Derek, "let's get out of here." As they walked away, Maya could hear Derek's voice, low and bitter. "This isn't over. My dad's on the school board. Her family doesn't have money for lawyers. We'll find a way to get rid of her." Maya sighed, knowing that this was likely just the beginning of her troubles. But for the first time since arriving at Westfield High, she felt like herself again. She had stood up to bullies and won, not through violence for its own sake, but by refusing to be a victim. The crowd began to disperse, students heading home or to after-school activities. But several approached Maya before leaving, introducing themselves and expressing their admiration for what she'd done. "I'm Emma," said the red-haired girl, extending her hand. "Emma Walsh. I've been wanting to tell Derek off for years, but I never had the courage." "Maya Rodriguez," Maya replied, shaking her hand. "And it's not about courage. It's about knowing when you've had enough." "Will you teach me?" Emma asked eagerly. "The fighting stuff, I mean. There are a lot of bullies at this school, and most of us just take it because we don't know what else to do." Maya considered the request. Teaching others would mean staying visible, making herself a target for retaliation. But it would also mean building alliances, creating a network of students who could stand up for each other. "Maybe," she said finally. "Let me think about it." As Maya walked home that afternoon, she reflected on how much her life had changed in a single day. This morning, she had been the invisible new girl, trying desperately to blend in and avoid conflict. Now she was the girl who had taken down the school's biggest bullies, and everyone would know her name by tomorrow. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "How was your first day, Mija? Make any friends?" Maya smiled as she typed back, "It was interesting. I think I made an impression." The next morning, Maya arrived at school to find that everything had changed. Students who had ignored her the day before now nodded respectfully as she passed. Some smiled and said hello. Others whispered and pointed, but the tone was different now, awe rather than mockery. Derek was nowhere to be seen, though Maya heard rumors that he was at home with a sports injury. Brad showed up with a black eye and several visible bruises, but he avoided eye contact and gave Maya a wide berth in the hallways. Tyler, surprisingly, approached her during lunch. He looked nervous, but determined as he sat down across from her at the same table where this had all started. "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "What we did yesterday was wrong. I know that now." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "What changed your mind?" Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "I went home and watched the video I took, really watched it, not just the fighting part. I saw how scared you looked when Derek took your phone and how you tried to avoid the whole thing. We were being bullies, and I didn't want to admit it to myself. And now I realize that just because someone seems like an easy target doesn't mean they actually are, and even if they were, that doesn't make it okay to pick on them." He paused, then added, "I deleted the video, all copies of it." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That must have been hard. It probably would have gotten a lot of views." "Yeah, well, some things are more important than internet fame." Tyler stood up to leave, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I think Derek's going to leave you alone. His dad might be on the school board, but his mom saw the video before I deleted it. Apparently, she was not happy about her son being a bully." Over the following weeks, Maya settled into a new routine at Westfield High. The initial excitement over the fight died down, but its effects lingered. Students who had been victims of bullying began to find their voices, inspired by Maya's example. Emma became her first real friend at the school, and soon Maya found herself surrounded by a diverse group of students who had previously been isolated by the school's rigid social hierarchy. True to her word to Emma, Maya started an informal self-defense club that met after school. She taught basic KRAV MAGA techniques, but more importantly, she taught confidence and situational awareness. The club grew rapidly, drawing students from all social groups who wanted to learn how to protect themselves and others. Derek eventually returned to school, but he was a changed person. The easy arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by a sullen wariness. He still had his friends and his position on the football team, but his reign as the undisputed king of Westfield High was over. He kept his distance from Maya and her growing circle of friends, and the few times their paths crossed, he looked away quickly. One afternoon, about a month after the fight, Maya was leaving the school library when she encountered Derek alone in the hallway. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the memory of their confrontation hanging between them like a physical presence. "I wanted to say something," Derek said finally, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Maya waited, her posture relaxed but alert. "I was wrong," he continued, the words seeming to cause him physical pain. "About you, about a lot of things. I thought because my family has money and influence, I could treat people however I wanted, but you showed me that there are consequences for being a bully." "And?" Derek looked down at his feet. "And I'm sorry. For taking your phone, for humiliating you, for everything. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know." Maya studied his face, seeing genuine remorse there. "Thank you for saying that. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." "Yeah, well, you taught me a lot about courage." Derek managed a weak smile. "I heard about your self-defense club. That's really cool. Maybe the school will be a better place because of it." "Maybe," Maya agreed, "but only if people like you decide to be better too." Derek nodded and walked away, leaving Maya alone in the hallway. She watched him go, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The boy who had tormented her was still there, but he was no longer the same person who had stolen her phone and demanded she beg for its return. As the semester progressed, Maya's reputation at Westfield High evolved from the girl who beat up Derek to something more nuanced and respected. She became known as someone who stood up for others, who wouldn't tolerate bullying in any form, and who had the skills to back up her convictions. But more importantly, she became known as someone who used those skills responsibly, never escalating conflicts unnecessarily or becoming a bully herself. The self-defense club continued to grow, and Maya found herself becoming an unofficial leader among the school's previously marginalized students. She organized study groups, mediated conflicts, and created a support network for anyone who felt isolated or threatened. The rigid social hierarchy that had once defined Westfield High began to break down, replaced by something more fluid and inclusive. Her mother noticed the change in Maya's demeanor almost immediately. The quiet, worried girl who had started at Westfield High was gone, replaced by someone confident and purposeful. When Maya told her about the fight and its aftermath, her mother's reaction surprised her. "I'm proud of you, Mija," she said, pulling Maya into a hug. "Not for fighting, but for standing up for yourself and then using that strength to help others. That's what your father would have wanted." Maya felt tears prick her eyes at the mention of her father. "I miss him, Mom. I wish he could have seen this." "He did see it," her mother said softly. "Every time you choose to be strong instead of bitter, every time you help someone who can't help themselves, he sees it. And he's proud." As Maya's junior year drew to a close, she reflected on how much her life had changed since that first day at Westfield High. She had arrived as an outsider, desperate to fit in and avoid conflict. She was ending the year as a leader, someone who had fundamentally changed the culture of her school through a combination of strength, compassion, and unwavering principles. The final test came during the last week of school, when a group of sophomore bullies decided to target a freshman who reminded Maya of herself, small, quiet, and clearly from a family with limited means. Maya happened to witness the incident in the same courtyard where her own confrontation with Derek had taken place. "Hey!" she called out, her voice carrying the authority she had earned over the past months. "Leave him alone!" The bullies turned to face her, their expressions shifting from confidence to uncertainty as they recognized who was confronting them. Maya's reputation had grown to legendary proportions among the younger students, and none of them wanted to test whether the stories they'd heard were true. "We weren't doing anything," one of them said weakly. "Good," Maya replied, walking over to help the freshman gather his scattered books. "Then you won't mind moving along." They did, quickly and without argument. The freshman looked up at Maya with the same expression of awe and gratitude that she had seen so many times over the past months. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'm Marcus." "Maya," she replied, helping him to his feet. "And you don't need to thank me. Just remember this moment when you're older and stronger. Remember what it feels like to be helpless, and make sure you never make someone else feel that way." Marcus nodded solemnly, understanding that he had just received a lesson that went far beyond self-defense. As Maya walked away from the courtyard, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. She had come to Westfield High as a victim, someone who absorbed abuse because she thought she had no other choice, but through standing up for herself, she had discovered not just her own strength, but her ability to inspire strength in others. The girl who had once been afraid to speak up in class was now someone who commanded respect throughout the school. The phone that had nearly been destroyed in an act of casual cruelty was now filled with messages from friends who valued her friendship and guidance, and the skills that her uncle had taught her for self-protection had become tools for protecting an entire community. Maya Rodriguez had learned that sometimes the most important fights aren't the ones you win with your fists, but the ones you win by refusing to become the thing you're fighting against. She had faced down bullies and emerged victorious, but more importantly, she had emerged with her principles intact and her capacity for compassion strengthened rather than diminished. As she prepared to enter her senior year at Westfield High, Maya knew that there would be new challenges ahead. But she also knew that she was ready for them, armed not just with the physical skills her uncle had taught her, but with the wisdom that comes